Hello, this is Chris Parker, and I just had a conversation with Adrian Pradzioch on the Business Simplicity podcast. And he is automating customer support at the international brand Suit Supply. We talk about why they did it, how they implemented it in 3 weeks, and the initial results they had, as well as some tips and tricks that he has for people who are considering to automate customer engagement. So, Adrian, why would this be really valuable for someone to listen to it?
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. Well, if you're looking to understand how to expand your laziness towards ambitious and generative AI related work, make sure not to miss our conversation.
The Business Simplicity Podcast, where we learn about strategies and tactics to succeed through simplicity, with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome back to the Business Simplicity Podcast. This is Chris Parker, and I'm talking to Adrian Pradzioch, who is the exactly the title, I'm not quite sure, but he's doing work with Suit Supply. And Suit Supply is a really cool company here in the Netherlands. That maybe we'll talk a little bit about why that's so cool. But he's the customer operations automation lead. And like me, he is a member of the Gen AI Circle. And that is really an international community of doers and thinkers, mostly doers in the Gen AI space. And he posted recently that he made a fully integrated, fully automated agentic AI customer support bot for Suit Supply in 3 weeks. And of course, that made me perk up because this is a space that I'm very busy with as the chief experience officer with Tactful, and we do these kind of things. So I was like, oh, wow, that's super impressive. So Adrian, thank you so much for jumping on. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation to maybe pick each other's brains on how did you do that? Why did you do that? What have you seen so far, like in support metrics? Where do we think it's going? But before that, maybe just originally from Poland, but maybe just give a little bit of a introduction of yourself and how did you find yourself at Suit Supply working on just this really amazing stuff?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the invite, Chris. It was a pretty cool introduction. From my side, yes, I'm currently working at Suit Supply. I'm leading the automation projects for customer operations. So initially, I'm focusing on deploying the support bot for all our customers to, take out the workload from our agents and to speed up all the KPIs that the Suit Supply is reporting on, especially my department. The question was, how did I end up here? Well, it's a long story. I'll make it a short story. 5 years ago, I joined micromobility startup Dot. So it's basically you're jumping on those scooters, you pay on your app, and you drive you pay per amount of minutes you rode. And I started as an agent, so I was responding to all those tickets related to problems that the users had, right? So I cannot end my ride, for example. There's a big building and the GPS doesn't work, I cannot end my ride. So initially I started just responding to those tickets and following certain procedures that were in customer support, but I thought that was a bit repetitive. At the time I just needed money and I had this job, and I think a couple of months after I found myself just looking for ways to avoid work.
Love that.
So
what a
so
great
I think,
motivation.
yeah. I think at the time the motivation to automate was related to my laziness. I wanted to work less. Now, luckily, it morphed into something slightly more ambitious for myself that makes me feel a bit better about my work. But since then, I'm just automating things for customer operations. At the time, we started with the NLU, right? So the scenario-based bot, and then it evolved into Gen AI. I guess jumping to how I joined Suit Supply, I worked for 3 years Dot with my manager, and then she switched to Suit Supply, and we really wanted to work together again, basically doing the same thing. So automating customer support by using generative AI tools and combining them with low-code tools.
Yeah.
Because actually, if you just connect the bot to your knowledge base, out of the box, it should automate between 20 and 30% of tickets. At Dot, at some point before I left, we managed to automate 70% of all customer support tickets, with the goal being 90. And here the goal is, let's say, similar.
Oh, cool. I am a suit supply customer, and I remember, maybe I'm dating myself, when it first opened, and it was a bit revolutionary because there was at that time, suit supply was coming in with standard, more standard, like high end, like high quality, but there were these standard fitted shirts and suits and things, and it was also in creative places, like places where you would not normally expect it, like off this freeway, and make it very convenient for people to buy their suits. And there was a way of getting basically bespoke suits for less. Is that still what suit supply is all about?
Yeah, definitely. I actually, just to be honest, the first suit supply experience was a month ago, where I went shopping
Okay.
for some clothes, and I found it quite cool. I mean, I was waiting for my appointment. There was a bartender. They were offering coffee, tea, beers, and a couple of drinks, and you were just waiting for the person to help you out with your shopping, right? And then everyone is just really helpful, trying for you to match whatever you're looking for, giving advice. So that was pretty new to me. I know that the experience varies depending on the city. There's 150 shops currently around the world. The one in USA has a swimming pool, or I heard, where you just, you wait for your appointment and you can chill in the swimming pool and then you jump into a suit.
Wow. Right. Yeah.
So that's cool, right? That gives you a feeling of like, okay, that's interesting. I would like to see how this experience goes, and then have a suit, or any other accessories. So I quite like it. I like the concept.
No, cool. And based on that, so that's a bit where the customer experience is all about. I did not know it was in the States or with the pool. Very curious about that.
Yeah.
But what kind of service support questions, like what was the problem you were trying to solve with this? Like what was the problem you were trying to solve with, that demanded automation?
Yeah. So I guess depending on actually you're trying to solve for all the problems in reality, but then depending on the complexity and the amount of requests coming in, you're trying to focus on the ones that are like low effort and high impact. That's my main focus for now. So the question that is coming the most often are related to my orders. Where's my order? And the status of the order. The status of alterations, for example, if you buy a suit, you can shorten the sleeves, or you can shorten anything else. And then it takes time for the tailor to actually do this alteration, and you want to know because you're in a rush. So we're looking to solve those initially. But then there are others, like creating return labels, like scheduling appointments, and maybe understanding why your payment failed. So for each of those, we're trying to give the answer as quick as possible, because otherwise, the human can respond, but it takes some time.
Yeah.
So the idea is not only to automate those tickets, but actually to give the responses as quickly as possible with as much context as possible. And then at some point, the personalization will come. But initially, we're focusing on trying to fix those answers.
And how did the process go? Like, is this something you recommended, or were you hired to do this? Like some companies say, well, we don't want bots. We want to keep it a very human experience. So it sounds like there was a strategic decision to go this route. Were you involved in that, or what was the background to get a green light for this kind of initiative?
Yeah, that was what I was hired for. Actually, I was hired to implement the self-service generative AI bot for customer support, but also to automate customer operations. Basically, wherever the agent has struggled with, for example, copy pasting a lot of information between 3 different tabs, I'm also looking to automate those things. But initially, we focus on self-service. The idea was mostly presented by my manager. This is a strategic decision to improve all the possible KPIs, but also to save money on operations.
No, nice. And you got this live in 3 weeks, and then we'll talk about iterating and improving, and and what the next steps are. But what did that plan look like? So it's like you were hired, and then they say, get this done. And you're like, okay, well, let me get this done in 3 weeks, something that, maybe could have taken 3 years a while ago. What did that plan look like? How did you select the software, and what happened in those 3 weeks?
Yeah, so the software was selected based on our previous experience. So together with my manager, her name is Randy, we worked with ADA in the past 3 years at Dot. And day by day we were making mistakes and finding new solutions and solving issues. So if you take into account the context, this was the best possible option, because for the next couple of years, we are able to work with the tool that we already know and implement the changes based on the idea of high impact and low effort.
Yeah.
So mostly based on experience, we worked with ADA for the last 3 years, also starting with the NLU technology. Well, I mentioned 3 weeks, but I mean, it took me 6 days to make a presentation for my interview. So,
okay.
And based on this presentation, I was just basically following the roadmap that I was asked to do for my interview.
So in the interview, you presented a plan, a roadmap.
Yes.
To get it done. And then they said,
yeah.
Okay, you're hired and get it done. So.
Yes. Yes. That's a simple summary of that. Yes, exactly. So, for example, the most of the questions that are coming are related to orders. So we know that we should focus on that. The channel divide is kind of actually even email, phone, WhatsApp, web store, social media, so on. So it's also about it's kind of about deploying it to different channels simultaneously, working on automations that help the customers. So there's quite some work to be done, but it's quite fun.
So ADA, and I'll put this in the show notes, ada.cx is a customer experience platform that I believe also allows handoff to the live agent, must have the analytics behind it. And you integrated this, I understood, with your Salesforce, but you also brought in N8N, and you couldn't have had too much experience on N8N because it's pretty new, I guess, or maybe you've been using very, very early versions of it. So, but you decided to use the agentic framework N8N, the automation framework, in addition to this. Like, what was in your mind when you said, okay, we need this new player in the stack to do certain things?
Yeah, we actually started automating like this with other tools. So I think for my automation journey started with Zapier, then I switched to make.com, then I switched to Retool, and in the end, the Retool was a bit, it was limiting me at the time due to costs. The workflows were quite expensive. So then I started working with a freelancing agency like 9-10 months ago, and they suggested the self-hosted version of N8N. So at the time, the Retool bill was like 3,000 euros for a startup, and then we went down to 50. So since like 9-10 months ago, I'm working with N8N.
Yeah.
And it only made sense to continue doing it here because of the amount of the possible complexity that you can add to the flows, the way it works. And ADA allows you to connect with APIs, right? And whatever you do between this connection, the N8N allows you to do really well.
So ADA's hosted, Salesforce obviously hosted, and N8N, would you just put that on AWS or something?
No, currently it's just on their cloud.
Okay. You bought the hosted version. Okay.
Yeah, we will work on the hosted version in the upcoming months, but for now it was not the priority, considering that you're also saving so much. You focus on the context of what you're saving now with the solutions that you're providing, and then after a year you're focusing on how to decrease those costs. So it's a step-by-step process. But with N8N, I'm connected to BigQuery. I can do JavaScript. I am connected to Teams. I can connect to the UPS API. Anything, then I can ask for this data from ADA, and then just do whatever I want for it. Sometimes I don't know what I want to do with this. Right? It just pops up.
Yeah.
But it's good to have this option.
That's kind of one of the, I don't know, the pitfalls or the risks is, how did you select the use cases to start with? Because you can do so much, you can go so broad so fast. How did you focus on the problems to solve first?
So you're checking. We have case labels, so it actually depends on, but you're putting the problems that the customers have in specific topics, right? So there are topics related to fulfillment, payments, appointments. And each of those topics is more or less popular. So the one that is the most popular, you're looking into how to automate this. Does it make sense to automate this, and how complex it would be, right? So in this case, it's about understanding how to retrieve data and how to return it to the customer, where to retrieve it from, how to get authorization to access this. And then you decide, okay, so this takes, I don't know, 30% of all the customer inquiries, and it's easy to automate. Let's just focus on that part.
Yeah.
And then the next one is maybe payments, right? Because customers often ask, hey, why wasn't I able to pay for this product? And then in reality, it's like, hey, you didn't have enough money, or something went wrong.
Yeah.
So it doesn't actually make sense to give it to a person to respond to, because it's a very, very simple inquiry. So that's, you look into the statistics, you try to understand what's happening in the last couple of months, what are the trends, and where's the most dissatisfaction related to the long responses and the quality of responses.
Oh, nice. And as far as measure of success, how long has it been alive, and how successful is it? How do you measure that?
It's been alive since last Tuesday. In terms of success, I would say for now, moderately successful, right? But it's also a period where you have to iterate and fix things. So I'm constantly, stumbling upon some small things that I have to solve that don't make it perfect. But I'm also discovering new things, right? So I don't know, things related to people trying to return products. It seemed like it's not the most popular issue, but now at the board, I can see that it drives the most dissatisfaction. So if you had people who are coming to resolve their problems with returning the item, they probably will be rather dissatisfied with how the bot works, because I didn't take it into account yet. But if you will think about people who are looking to get the information about the orders, they will be satisfied. So it really depends. The satisfaction has to be actually more spread out, if you think about it. It has to be calculated per case. I think for now, I'm solving 35% of all tickets after a week in one channel. So I'm working to add more and more channels, so this should go up a bit.
What channels would you add?
Email, WhatsApp, and phone. And social media is a bit like Facebook and Instagram. It's not that big of a flow. But
so you're expecting to go full voice? Does ADA support that?
I'm expecting to go full voice also, yes, until the end of the holiday. ADA supports that, but this is a bit more undiscovered territory yet for me. But it's also quite exciting, right?
No, super. And again, it's this whole space is moving forward on a daily and weekly basis. It's just mind-boggling. Yeah. So how do you determine or experience when things are going wrong? Because in my experience, you can imagine the flow, you can imagine the interaction, you can craft the prompt and based on and still based on intent, give a nudge on a reaction. But do you go into the system and observe failures, or are you in there looking at the conversations? And because this is what I do periodically, I just go in and start looking for when the intents failed, or also when they, oftentimes when like with the LLM, if the intent unknown, like, hey, I don't understand this, let me hand you off to a live agent. Or when they're asking for live agent, that's usually because something effed up in the bot. And I don't know, how do you discover what to improve? What's your improvement process?
So I'm doing this a bit like you just said. So it's a conversation by conversation, step by step, understanding what went wrong and why it did go wrong. But then I also have to look into N8N and follow the full error path, right? Because in N8N you can actually pin the data from an API call and understand step by step what went wrong, right? So the challenge I just had to solve this morning was related to the formatting of phone numbers I have from ADA and formatting of the phone numbers I have in Salesforce. So part of my authorization process in the flow is related to if those two phone numbers match. But in reality, they will never match because the format is always different. So then I had to understand what do I do about this? So what comes in help is AI. right? Then you give the example to the AI, you say what you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve this. So today I discovered something like fuzzy matching while writing JSON JavaScript code, where there's a threshold depending on the amount of digits in the phone number, where depending on the length of the string, actually, if 90% of numbers in the same order, but from the end of the phone numbers are matching, then I consider this authorized, and then I match this in my database. So this cool. took like a couple of hours to figure out. So was there? I discovered this through N8N, right? I can see the error and like, okay, but then what's there?
Yeah.
That was a cool problem to solve. I'm like, okay, what did I do with that?
Yeah, I was going to ask what. So let's talk about like most unexpected problems or coolest problems to solve. Like when you're going through this, maybe lessons learned. So like if someone is going to approach us, what were the one or two things that you never could have imagined once you started, but then you had to crack it in order to move forward? Was there anything that was like, oh, that was unexpected and super cool?
Yeah, I think the whole combination of generative AI and low code tools is really something that can up your game there. So it was a discovery process together. Also, it was introduced by my manager. She started working with Retool and trying to. We started with trying to solve the problems that the engineering didn't want to solve for us. Mm-hmm. And then you're just looking to, okay, then I'm just going to do it myself. So I really appreciate this attitude, and I learned a lot from this attitude. So actually combining low-code tools with generative AI, it's a way to pump up those statistics there. So that was the biggest lesson. For the other lesson is that there are always problems. So you always have to solve for those problems, right? And have to have an attitude of not solving about the problem, but about how to solve the problem. I would say that the biggest lesson for a technical standpoint, it's also crazy how much you can learn and how quickly you can forget what you learned. Okay. This is kind of like what I'm doing now. Like, okay, I'm solving for this one problem, and I can immediately see that I'm solving it. But then as soon as I go back to it in a month, I'm like, what have I been doing here? It's because the way we create the solutions now, the way I create solutions now, it's just very quick, and it's not very repetitive. You constantly have to solve for another problem. So documentation helps a lot.
How do you document?
I document through AI also. Recently, I discovered that you can just export the N8N flow and put it in ChatGPT, and step by step through the JSON, it just tells you what to do. Yeah. But I also try to. I'm very visual, so in N8N you can use the sticky notes, where I describe what the specific code does, what the node does, and so on. But I'm learning still a lot about documentation, how to do this properly, but very helpful.
No, great. So, if a company, a retailer, and you guys are omni-channel, you got online, offline, you're multinational, multi-channel. Yeah. If someone in that space was saying, "Oh, this is cool, we haven't done this," like, where would you recommend they start? Like, what would be the first thing? Do these three things first before you start implementing.
I would say the first one is scoping for the provider, right, and seeing what each tool does. Because I think there's a lot of now kind of in the news a lot about agentic flows, but I'm not exactly sure if this is a good solution for the enterprise. I think you probably know that there's a lot of limitations there and the things that can go wrong. I think I recently stumbled upon a conversation on Reddit where a customer was talking with the bank, with this chatbot support, and they somehow tricked it into talking about abortion, That's something that the enterprise account, that the enterprise solutions don't allow to do. Whatever I want to ask for in the chatbot, it has to be related to the topic of my business.
Yeah.
So scoping for the good provider is definitely the first thing to do. We went for ADA because we knew them, but there are a couple of different tools on the market, right? I think there's your tool. There's a lot of different people that are reaching out to me on LinkedIn to understand if we can collaborate together. I would say the second one is finding a person to lead this. It also depends on how much time you want to invest in this, right? I already made a lot of mistakes previously, so now I'm making less. But it was a long process, and a lot of things in the past went, wrong. But you learn the most from this.
How would you select?
So
How would you select you? Like if you were somebody who wasn't in it as far as you are, and they needed to select a partner, what would you look for?
yeah, I think depending on the context, I would probably start with looking someone inside the company that is already skilled with understanding what are the company problems. Because as an agent, you know everything that is happening. Actually, customer support knows everything that is happening in the business that goes wrong. So I started as an agent, and I think that was very helpful when working with the bot, because you know how you want to solve the problems. So I would say starting with someone who knows the scope of the business and is a bit skilled and technologically skilled. I think they call it like a citizen developer. I think this is like a proper name that started applying a couple of years ago. And I think, if someone is looking to solve the problems that they're having in like a more creative way, going outside of the box a bit, because otherwise you're not going to get help. That's a good person to start with, I'm trying to solve, who knows the problem and just trying to focus on solutions, not on the problem in itself. I think that's what I like to work with. That's kind of also what I learned from my manager. Focus on the problems happen; they will always happen. If you're going to solve them, that's kind of the part that is very valuable.
Yeah. No, cool. Yeah, it's. I think if you talk about like that banking case as well, because there's other platforms that are like super strict on the guardrails. I'm familiar with Raza, who's more from the NLU space, but they have their LLM suite now as well, and then they are on-premise installable for these highly regulated environments. But I think that's pretty rare if you have those kind of needs, and if you're starting kind of small and maybe using an internal case for the agents, maybe as an agent assist to start. But it sounds like you guys went straight for it. So. And now
it's a bit different, right? Yeah. I think if you approach it as a bank, then you have to take into account different things. For a startup that was focusing on mobility and technology, also different things to take into account. For a company that sells suits, it's a bit, I would say, it's too complex, but it's a bit easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question, and then I'll ask about where do you think it's going before we start to wrap up. But Suit Supply has a very distinct brand, has a pool in a store. Didn't know about that.
I think so.
Well, imagine they do. It doesn't sound unreasonable, thinking about the Suit Supply brand. They have very edgy, creative, billboards. It has a clear personality. I'm curious, how did you bring the Suit Supply personality in the automated bot experience?
That's trickier, right? So you can define the tone, you can define the mannerism, and a lot depends on the language of the knowledge base that you're connecting to the bot, how those things are written. I personally think that it is very hard to do when you think about having a team of 40 agents. How will they align with the brand of the voice? It's hardly possible. There's also a part where it obviously has to be polite, and it has to be helpful, and it has to speak in a grammatically correct way. But in reality, when you come in to solve the problem, to have your problem solved, you just want to have it solved. You won't see if the bot is following brand guidelines. It just has to align with what you expect. So it's you have to focus on a couple of things, but some of them I don't necessarily think they have to be prioritized that much. The guardrails, they have to be there, right? You have to make sure that the answers are safe, that bot is not hallucinating with different things. But in reality, it's very hard to train people to follow the voice of the brand. It's easier to train the bot, but it will never really reach what the brand marketing person wants. It just has to be helpful and solve the problem as quickly as possible.
Well, I think in my
everyone will be happy.
in my experience, because I do a lot of work with hotels, that there are different, maybe not specific hotel brand things, but there's some that are more 5-star. They want more of a like a traditional concierge tone, and like
Hmm.
there's hip city hotels are more loosey goosey, and
Yeah,
so you can play with a little bit,
yeah, you can define that. That should work.
but at least think about it. I think like, hey,
Yeah,
this is representing your brand to customers at a moment of truth when they're pissed off or frustrated or confused, and this is the time for the company to shine. So let's definitely try to get
yeah,
that.
yeah. I think the problem I had with the previous experience was that there was a lot of different language versions, and the brand was using specific words in specific
Oh,
languages, but you couldn't define. I still cannot define this in this tool. So, for example, a word in English, when we're talking about the brand, it thought we could use the word ride. We didn't use the word trip. But then, if you think about it, different translations would have to match
hmm.
this word in English in the specific version. So, in Italian, it was a different word. In French, it was a different word. But in reality, in our communication, we were sticking to this with all our
All
emails and
right,
everything.
okay.
But you couldn't define that in the bot. So that was a bit of a complaint, and it's a fair complaint. So I would like to be able to specify that the word suit in English, French, and so on has to be translated to this specific word and used only and used in every context. That's a cool feature, but I couldn't do it.
No, interesting. It's and indeed, when you're translating and the machine's translating, it is hard to um I guess to determine what it's going to happen. I guess that's the downside of the power of LLM, because they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a lot that you don't know with this. Like at some point I had to work with Hebrew translations, but I don't speak any Hebrew, so I
Right.
don't know how is the brand feel on the Hebrew side. I have no idea. The same goes for every other language, but
Mm.
then you could at least understand the letters, right? For Arabic, for Hebrew, for other languages we had, I just didn't know if
Yeah.
what I'm doing aligns. I knew that what I'm doing in English aligns, but that if you come from a different country, like the experience can be completely different. And that I think is a challenge that is very hard to solve. So you work with a bit of ambiguity, like I assume in English as well, but in other languages may not be, and that's tricky. How do
Yeah.
you discover that? Like,
So where do you think it's going? And I know it's an unfair question, because nobody really knows. It's going so fast and
yeah,
it's evolving so quickly. But maybe for suit supply, or in the part of the industry that you're really familiar with, and um, um, is in your area of professionalism, where do you think this is going in the next year, 2 or 3? Like
yeah.
what's coming?
I think you probably know, but the one word comes to my mind is bots. Everyone
Okay.
here is crazy about bots. Like they want to have a bot for this. They want to have a bot for HR. They want to have a bot for the internal knowledge base. They want to have a bot for the internal knowledge base that will be able to create tickets in Jira. So those agentic, specific case by case solutions are a thing right now. We just heard it implemented today, so I have a bot in Teams where I can be like, "Hey, how much holidays do I have left?" And it's connected to the HR tool that tells me what's my balance.
Hmm.
Then someone has a knowledge base in SharePoint. I could connect this knowledge base to SharePoint, and every week there's a communication. I ask for questions related to that. So I think bots, for now, definitely that can do things for you, but like a specific task per specific department. I think that's where it goes, because then you can use case by case, have time to actually understand what goes well and what goes wrong, and how to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're definitely going to be surrounded by bots, agentic bots that are doing
Yes.
little tasks for us at home as well as at work. And we'll be more of an orchestrator, the commander of these bots, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a cool topic. It's nice if it works well, right? But I think some cases can be very complex and can go wrong. So it's nice to find balance between this.
So how about the Gen AI circle? I'm curious, in your words, what is the Gen AI circle for you? why would you recommend people check it out and perhaps join? Who would it be perfect for?
Yeah.
In your mind?
I mean, I'm benefiting from this circle a lot, especially depending if you think about the tools that people are using, right? I can offer those tools in my work, and I can get some work points for this. I'm like, hey, this is what I found. Maybe we should use this. It's a great, actually, source of knowledge in regards to the tools that are being used and how people solve problems in their business. And in many cases, you can apply to all the other businesses, right? I shared one thing that I did, and then someone else says, hey, I'm doing it like this, but I'm also adding a step, making your process much better. And that's a very valuable thing to have. And I'm trying to check it regularly. I'm like, okay, if I'm not doing it, I have a big FOMO. But that's a kind of like a healthy FOMO, because I'm just getting a lot out of it, even though I'm not like super active. I'm getting a lot, and I'm like, okay, I have a problem. I can ask someone will help me out. I think a couple of presentations that were done on those monthly Gen AI Circle meetings were like, oh, whoa, I would never think about this. I still remember someone was presenting the case about all those sensors available on the windmills. That each of those windmills, they have sensors and they gather data, but nobody knows what to do with this data. So connect it to AI and something will happen. I'm like, I would never think about this. So I think if you're really curious and looking for tech knowledge and tech updates, that's the place to go.
Yeah. So I'll include the link to the Gen AI Circle in the show notes. This was created by David Arnault, who I've known for years and years and years from Growth Tribe, which is also an amazing thing. And it's basically just a group. There's a small fee. I don't know what it is per month, but there's a small fee to join. There's WhatsApp groups by theme, and this is where Adrian's talking about the the FOMO. There's just a lot going on, and then there's on Thursday afternoons, and it's between 4 and 6 usually. So that means West Coast US can also join. They have these general brain trusts. I'm involved in the adoption and implementation circle, and next week, I think, based on the time that we're recording this, we have one. Helping coordinate that, and so that's more for the implementation and adoption. And there's a marketing and sales group. Just really, really interesting. So if you're really curious and if you're doing things in this space, there's definitely a community there for you. So, well, Adrian, thank you so much.
Sure.
Highlights for me was your motivation for this was to avoid work, and I think what a great place to start. Meaning. If it's unnecessary routine work, and if then avoid it. I
mean, funny enough, it created more work for me now, but it's good.
Yeah,
I like this type of work now, right? But
and then starting with your recommendation to start with someone who really knows the problem. So don't just throw tools at it. Makes a lot of sense for me. And then you've implemented. Just a week ago, and I don't think you can make these things perfect before you go live. You really have to go live and iterate and learn, but it needs care and attention. So this is never a set and forget thing. It's somebody's got to be
definitely
in the organization caring for it. And I think this is going to be a role like the HR for bots. The people who are making sure the bots are healthy and are even happy, because you can't set and forget these things. So it makes a lot of sense. So I will put for everyone your LinkedIn and also the link to Suit Supply in the show notes. This was fantastic. So Adrian, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the invite. It was really fun.
Thank you for listening. Visit ebullient.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player.